to about 6 people. It's really important. Because you're going to discuss. Because you're going to be talking to these people. You're going to be talking to them. And you're going to need to know what's going on. And you're going to actually engage with these people. Now, if I was running this focus group in town, what I would be doing is actually maybe doing this with a much smaller group of people. And when you're doing it, you'll be doing it with a much smaller group of people. Now, typically, focus groups are not 60. Typically, they're much more like 6. And you'll be getting into a group of people. Why would you run a focus group? Well, instead of going out and devising a questionnaire based on me, middle-aged, nasal Dubliner, and all of that socialisation, and all of those biases and prejudice, writing in questions which I think will get me the answers. Why don't I actually use the focus group to get people to generate, a focus group of the tribe itself, to get them to generate what the question should be. So in true qualitative style, instead of me as the external white-coated experimenter devising the questions and deciding what I think is important in terms of knowledge, why don't I actually go and ask the people themselves what's important in terms of knowledge? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So in other words, it's true qualitative in the sense if the group owned the data, not the so-called researcher. Is that fair? Okay. Mm-hmm. So in other words, if you see this process, the data will always belong to the group in itself. Okay. So I tried to pick a topic that we could all engage on. I was thinking, no, we might go to horses or something like that. We're a few experts here, not everybody. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a subject which is a little bit dear to my heart and probably dear to the school's heart as well. But it's a subject we can all talk about, okay? So let's say it's a subject that I want to know more about. And so I'm going to ask the tribe itself about the topic, right? I'm going to ask the tribe. So I'm going to go through a process, first of all, of definition. Instead of actually taking a term like engagement and assuming with my middle-aged nasal Dubliner history and assuming that we all share what engagement means, what I'm going to first of all do is I'm going to try and find out, do we share that? And can we get to some level of consensus about how much difference there is about it? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask each group of 6 to take something from me, or maybe Niall, will you make sure each group of 6 gets one of those little sets? One of those sets? Okay, give it to me. You'll try to be creative. 6 there. Group of 6. Group of 6. Group of 6. One thing that's really important is that you listen to me very carefully, because I'll say this as many times today. What I'd like you to do is I would like you to write one idea on each card as a group. And if Declan can't read it from where he's standing, you have to buy a round of drink for everyone in the audience.
Not drink for me.
So in other words, it has to be camera ready. It has to be camera ready. So one idea for each. We're going to move them around. So one idea for each, please, and take exactly 3 minutes and 15 seconds to do it.
Just one, isn't it? Just one.
Engagement in the classroom. Yeah, participate. That's a special.
That's the easy one, isn't it?
Engage, yes. Not just being told what to do. Not just being told. Yeah, okay. We need to sum it up in one word.
Not only students, but dialogue, but also students. Open to shopping as a control, right? You're into all aspects of
The bag outside.
Okay, back please. Okay. Now, because it's your data, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show it to you. I'm going to show it to you, and we're going to. I'm going to show it to you, and I'm going to ask you where we're going to cluster it. So, if this was a very small group, I might ask you to join me, and we quickly cluster it together. All hands on the board, etc., etc. Remember, you can do this on a flip chart in a small room, with a small group of people using post-it notes. Because the size of the room, we've just scaled it up just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you each item, and I'm going to ask you to help me cluster it as we go along. So we'll see the themes that are present in the issue.
You want us to identify themes?
I want you to help me as we go along, okay? So, and the easy way to do it is I'm just going to show you the card. I'm going to show you the card like this, and everybody will be able to see it. It says interaction. And the first one will obviously go somewhere handy, like there. But I'm going to place every other one in relation to it. So if it's somewhere similar in the same family, we'll put it underneath it. But if it's not, we'll move it off and create another family, etc., etc. Fair enough? So, this one's involved. Is that the same family or is it a new family?
Same family.
Same family.
Same family, okay. This one says responsive.
It's about the teacher.
New one? Yeah. We should tell this training company to give them better pens, shouldn't we? This one is a debate. You.
That's more like the first chapter.
It's a bit like the first one. Okay, and if somebody really thinks it's like the first one, I'll get him to write a fresh one. He can write it, and he can go in the first one as well, and we can start the new one. So we're not going to fight about it, okay? Network? Maybe it's a new one. Okay. Debate, a bit like that, yeah. Inclusion and participation.
Interaction.
Up here. Maybe it's a bit like that. Active learning. Sounds like a new one, is it? Sounds like a new one.
Can't be having that in university.
Participation.
An interaction.
You're too young to be cynical. So
I know.
Interaction. Debate.
God, all your minds have really been in the brainwash, haven't they? Stays away. It's a fresh one.
Might go under active learning.
Interaction. Communication.
It's a fresh one.
Interaction.
You think it's here?
Let's make it a separate one.
Okay. Make it a separate one. Okay.
Try it.
Important.
It's very important, isn't it? But
What?
Open communication.
we here? Okay. Mousy and interrupting. Stays awake. Like stays awake.
Active learning.
Could be this. Active learning.
Active
Yeah.
learning.
Could be active learning. Could be active learning. Participation.
Participation. Interaction. Communication.
We got one down here. Just communication. Asks questions. Debate. We here? Could be there. Interest in the subject matter. New one? Could be like that. Interaction. We've got more of that. Social. Social life. This is extracurricular activity. Network. Okay. Okay. This is just as an exercise. This would be my first thing. If you can think of this as a metaphor for the first meeting, I'm in definition mode. I'm trying to define terms. I'm trying to define things. And I'm trying to come to a conclusion, whether it is with the group or not. What do we think engagement is? And I might go on and work with them to try to come to some sentence-long definition of what they think it is. We come together, we work together. But we're getting to a point where we've got some level of agreement on what they mean by it. So I stepped in thinking I knew what engagement was, but now I'm finding a rich meaning of what people in the room think it is. And we're getting to a point where we might even be able to craft one, two more definitions about what that might be. I might set them a group work, something like that, which might go away and they might do it, or else we might stay with it and we might work out some kind of definition. But once we've got to a definition, lots of things become possible. We can actually start asking different questions in the room. But if we don't get that definition right, we can't really move forward to ask the important questions. And now that I've got some level of definition, I really want to ask a question about it. Because I want to take a snapshot. And wherever I go, whether I'm talking to a client or whether I'm talking to a focus group, I want to take a snapshot of where they think that issue is now. So usually I'll ask a question which is supported by some kind of graph to try to find out where they think that issue is. What's their view about where our tribe, our unit, where are we on this picture? Where are we on this road? So when you think about the road to engagement, if you said we were at the finish, well, if you think about it, it looks to me like people should be flying in from all over the world. We should be making DVDs. We should be running a master's degree in engagement at the university, if we're up here. And if you think, well, we're really only at the start, etc., etc., you might say, well, we really are very poor at it. We don't even talk to each other. We don't know who we are. We're at war. There's no engagement whatsoever. People are apathetic. They're out in the streets. Or maybe you think we're somewhere around the middle. Or maybe you think perhaps it's worse than that. When it comes to engagement, we're on the road to nowhere. And how do I get you to pitch in and join in that? Well, one way I would do it is to ask you to make your own decision mentally about where, if you were asked, where would you say we are on that graph? Do you think we're at the stage where we're really good enough to teach other people? Do you think we're actually not even on the stage where we're even within touching distance or not even starting? Or do you think we're so-so? Or do you think we're completely off the graph? In order to do that, groups of 6, What I'd like you to do is take one of these adhesive dots, one per person. Oh, will you help out one per person? You pass that one per person?
You're not fine.
Pass that one per person. Watch, you pass that So, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to join me here, and I'd like you to place the dot where you think, at a place which represents where you think we're at in terms of student engagement. Can you join me?
Paul, right here, right now, today, is that what you're calling it?
This minute.
All together at the same
All together at the same time, and I'll walk this direction.
time.
Question everywhere.
Oh yeah, I don't
Got a good shot. It's a big head.
You could have kind of predicted it in a way, and you're probably saying, Donovan, you kind of set us up the way you phrased that. No, you're not a facilitator, you're a facilitator. So at the end of the day, you get a bit of bunching like that, even though it looks spread out for a minute, but you can see a bit of bunching. But what have I achieved in this second with this graph? What does this graph tell you? What jumps off the page?
Looks pretty.
I love it myself. What do you think?
We're all on the same path. It's a variance.
There's a certain sense, but there's also a certain variance. But the other thing as well is, I think in general, if I start around here, with a few outliers, and if I come up to here, it still says to me, no matter how good people think it is, it still says to me,
Scope for improvement.
we've got a gap, haven't we? So there's a gap in the issue. And if you come down here, we've got an enormous gap. Okay. So in other words, that's great, because there's another question I really wanted to ask, and it was the question I wanted to ask all the time. But I needed to have something like this. I needed to have something from the group to give me permission to ask the question. So it bumps me along, this beautiful picture, which takes you about 4 minutes to do, it bumps me along to the next one, which is, what's preventing students getting engaged in class? Pardon the pun. But if I'd asked that first, if you assume for a moment, what would happen if I'd asked that first? If I'd gone in and said, what's preventing students getting engaged? You might ask another question. You might say, what do you mean getting engaged? I'm engaged. No, you must be talking about somebody else. So it may be that people would say, you've put too many assumptions into the question. But now you own the data, and you've now said something to me. I'm able to go forward and answer, or ask you another question. This is the question I really wanted to answer, because I'm actually researching an issue of engagement, which is very, very topical in universities of today. So, I really wanted to answer that question, and in order to do that, I should be in with the rhythms now of this, and I repeat myself all the time. 6, cards to the 6, cards to the 6. 6. Please answer the question.
That's what we're
It is true though, it's not a small day and a long day. So feel that's kind of tempting actually. He looks nothing like
Why are you
I like you going this
Here's been talked right clearly.
Here's the point break.
I got everything already. I'm afraid to pause it.
Okay. Similar situation. Similar situation. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Now, one of the things we generally do is if it's a sensitive subject and you're looking for anonymity in the groups. So in a group of 60, it's easy to get anonymity. But in a small team, when you may be dealing with something like a performance management system and you're talking about something which has issues for people's careers, one of the things I find is using pairs is often very good for getting people to open up. So you know, in this country, in Irish Sikh, if something you tell to one person at a time, that kind of thing. So putting people into pairs gets an awful lot more information out. Whereas when you get larger groups, it tends to stifle debate, especially on sensitive issues. Also, if you're going to just manage the housekeeping issues, if you're going to ask people to be open with you, make sure that the group on the left don't have the fluorescent red pen or something like this. You know, that's a real giveaway, that kind of thing. Or even when placing dots, Ask the most senior people to be last. You know, maybe push them or whisper to them. Maybe you go last. Because conformity is a big issue in groups. You know, the Ash experiments of many years ago tell us that, you know, no matter how big we think we are and how great our self-esteem, we still conform to expectations of other people. So have a think about it before you do it. Now, I won't run through the whole of this, but basically just to go through it and ingrain it into our brains again and put it into the muscle memory. Attention and shyness, separate. Yeah. Bottom material separate. Age and experience, separate. Could be related to attention span. Class number, it could be attention span. Class numbers, big classes I suppose. There may be a time constraint, is that? So, you guide me and you tell me where these things are to go. And eventually we get to a point whereby we say, poor delivery, that must be something to do with the teacher. Lack of understanding. These teachers. Condescension, there's another one. No, could be around poor delivery, couldn't it?
Yeah.
What do you think? Could be something like that. What about shyness? Be over here? See, one of the details about asking groups is about one in each card, because attention span and shyness, they're two separate things. So you might actually say, well, we'll come back to that, and we'll say, maybe that's good for shyness, but we'll leave it like that. Okay. Age. Might go in there somewhere. Life experience. That pretty similar? Yeah. Might be different, etc., etc. But we would go on, and I won't drive you crazy by exhausting you all the way through. But basically speaking, anytime I throw out cards, I throw out about 36 cards, no more than about that, mid-30s. Because usually you can manage that process, and it's usually quite easy to do. And you get enough information back. But once you have it in a state like this, you've categorized. In other words, you've themed the ideas. And once having themed the ideas, qualitative people would say to you, well, you've got to get some kind of a category heading on it, or you've got to put some kind of a label on it, or you've got to describe it in some way. And I tend to work with the group and ask them, what would they describe this category as? And to make the ownership of it even more, the minute they shout out a category, I give them a pen and ask them to write it. So in other words, the idea that the data belongs to you all the time rather than belongs to me. I'm just a conduit, I'm only a pen, that's all I am, and I'm just encouraging you. I'm a facilitator in the sense that I'm putting structure, a scaffolding around you so that you can build something, but the thing you build is your own. You build it. The data belongs to you. Rather quickly, I'd probably say to individuals, look, when it comes to any list like this, it's a brainstorm, it's a list. And everybody thinks that lists are usually the same value. But what we really need to do is we need to start prioritizing these topics so that we can understand which of them are most important to the group themselves. They might, an awful lot of people who speak a lot and are strong in groups might speak a lot about specific topics. But when it comes to it, what we really need to do is we need to have the quieter people also speak, and we need to have their issues prioritized. Now the best way I find to do prioritization is usually to put the topics up and to have people vote on them. And one of the simplest ways of doing it is just a voting method. Just giving out people votes and asking them to come and pick the issue, which is transcribed from here to here, and vote on it in this bit. Get the point? Yeah. So in other words, we take each category and we move it across here. Don't be fooled by the idea that 15 cards here means that that's the winner. By the time people get to experience each item and learn more and more about it, remember this is the tribe talking to each other, generally speaking I find that it doesn't actually prioritize. The one with the biggest number of cards doesn't actually prioritize. But eventually we rank and we decide which one gets the most votes. In fact, it's really better to let them do the counting as you stand above it. And then you've worked out some kind of an order or a prioritization of the issues in relation to the topic, whatever it might be. It's engagement we're talking about, but it could be anything. It could be customer service, could be performance management. You're trying to find out what the tribe feels about it. So the issue behind it is that you're now beginning to see headings for questions that you might ask in a survey. You're beginning to see the issues that you need to deal with in that quantitative